live streaming on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to all of you who are watching from home. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the land on which we're located, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and anyone else who is watching this stream tonight. Now, councillors, I have not received an apology for tonight's meeting. However, I wish to make note that tonight Councillor Adams has joined this meeting via Zoom. For those who are watching the meeting via live stream, you may not be able to see her on the screen until she's actually speaking, but we can guarantee you that in the chamber we have a very big video of her. And I will be able to see if she's putting her hand up or waving at me frantically in the background. Okay. Now, confirmation of minutes. Item 4 on the agenda. Councillor, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 22nd of February 2022 please be confirmed? That is moved Councillor Bedio, seconded Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda tonight? No? Presentations. I would like to just under this part of the agenda, like many Moonee Valley residents, I've watched with deep concern the invasion in Ukraine and the devastation this is causing to the people of that country. Moonee Valley is a culturally and linguistically diverse community with almost 1/3 of the population born overseas, including Ukraine and Russia. We are proud to embrace anyone in our community who loves our country, freedom, fairness and democracy. I have reached out to the local Ukraine community members recently and was pleased to show them support at this challenging time and hear stories from their families still over in the Ukraine. Our thoughts are with our local residents and loved ones who have been directly impacted by this war, and I know that I'm saying that on behalf of all of Council. Councillors, do we have any other presentations for today? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, today is International Women's Day, and we celebrate the many women and girls who live, work, play and learn in Moonee Valley, and through their contributions to our city make it stronger. In particular, I want to acknowledge and honour my fellow councillors, Mayor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Ava Adams, Councillor Rose Isa and Councillor Narelle Sharp, obviously our other councillors who are our allies, and our CEO, Helen Swee. This morning, the Mayor hosted a fantastic breakfast, and we had the privilege of hearing from a panel of amazing local women who spoke about how they have broken barriers and expanded opportunities for women here in Moonee Valley. Danny Angelico, and Adele Rhoda and Emily Unity provided incredible insight and a breadth of experience as they really generously shared their experiences with us. We had a really engaged audience of incredible women from Moonee Valley who also had some really insightful questions for our panel. I took so much away from the morning, and I'm particularly impressed at the calibre of the young leaders in our community. Council is committed to achieving gender equity in our workforce and in the work that we do. We're proud to see the Gender Equality Act of 2020 come to life in Moonee Valley, and we're in the midst of developing a gender equality action plan for Council that will see our teams and departments consider gender equality in their programs, policies and service delivery. While there's more to do, I'm so proud to be a part of this council, led by a majority of women and our amazing CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Very well spoken. Councillors, do we have any other presentations for tonight? No. And I also don't believe we have any petitions or joint letters. And item 8 on the agenda is public question time. We have not received any questions which comply with Governance Rule 61 question time for tonight's meeting. So we will move on to item 9 on the agenda, the reports from delegates. Councillors. Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Wednesday on the 2nd of March, the Metropolitan Transport Forum was held, which I'm a delegate for on behalf of Moonee Valley. I presented, so councils present in a rolling fashion on what they're doing with transport with respect to their action plans and their council plan. With our engineering services team member we talked about what we're doing with pop-up bike lanes, advocacy on our Western Gateway station that we're pushing for, reforms as part of our recent planning scheme amendment, C207 Moonee, among other things. As well as that, we had a guest speaker, Marion Terrell from the Grattan Institute, talking about their car plan and practical policies for cleaner transport and better cities.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do we have any other reports? No. In that case, councillors, we will move on to item 10 on the agenda. Item 10.1 is Financial Performance Report December 2021. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Bedio.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
With an amendment. Updated.
With an amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Bedio. If you could just read out just the amendment.
Just the amendment? No worries. The amendment is just an additional part to point A to add at the end of 30 June 2022 in brackets updated attachment 1 end bracket.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Adams. See, I could see you on the screen. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Council is required to receive quarterly financial performance reports in accordance with Section 97(1) of the Local Government Act 2020. This report is for the period 1 July 2021 to the 31st of December 2021. In line with good governance, it forms part of the public accountability process and reporting and includes 1, an operating statement, 2, a balance sheet, 3, a cash flow statement, and 4, capital expenditure. In the report, there is a table that summarises the financial performance at 31 December 2021. The year-to-date variances at 31st December 2021 are mainly due to timing differences, so I'm comfortable with those and encourage anybody watching to read the finance report on our website. It's riveting stuff if you haven't done so already. The annual variances through capital works and cash investments are large, and these are attributed to the $2.1 million mentioned in realised project savings and $9.1 million of capital works to be carried over into 2022 and 2023 financial year. With regard to capital works, there was a mid-year review held during January with project managers when it was determined that the bulk of spend would be anticipated to occur in Q4 for the high-value building, roads and park programs, and I'm pleased to see that the majority of our program is on track to be well underway, if not completed before June 30. I will note that there are a few highly anticipated projects that are off track, such as Boeing Reserve and Cross Keys, works, implementation, as well as Essendon Rowing Club upgrade. However, I know officers are doing their best to progress these projects, especially in trying times. In conclusion, the finance report for the 6 months ended 31 December 2021 indicates that although there is minor unfavourable forecast surplus to the budgeted surplus, Council's overall financial position for the year ending 30 June 2022 is sound.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.2 on the agenda is the Council Plan and Budget Implementation Update, Q1 and 2 2021/22. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Hodgson.
The council plan reporting, sorry, Mayor, I need to get my second screen. The council plan and budget implementation update is a report that shows us what projects that we have in our council plan for this year are and aren't on track. It's a really useful tool for us to understand how we're going and what extra things might need to be in place to get those projects that might have slid off track a little bit back on track. A few highlights from the reporting is that there are a number of initiatives that are either complete or on track for delivery, including the launch of our Library on the Move, which if you've been to some of our Summer in the Valley events, you might have seen already. Progress towards implementing our Reconciliation Action Plan, celebrating and raising the visibility of our LGBTIQ+ community through a co-design approach with our LGBTIQ+ reference group, completion of the Keilor East Leisure Centre, commencement of construction of the Flemington Hub, improving the way that we support and engage volunteers through partnerships with volunteer organisations, which is a really great initiative, and supporting our community to reduce carbon emissions through engaging with the community on education programs and other initiatives. While there are some things that have fallen off track, I think the report really usefully notes those steps that will be taken to get those back on track. And as I mentioned, it's just a really useful step in the process to have a report like this, so that we identify those and the strategies to be able to deliver on our commitment to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.3 on the agenda is electric vehicle charging in Moonee Valley. Councillors, do I have a motion?
I have a motion, Mayor.
Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move, please, that Council resolves to A, endorse the proposal to implement an electric vehicle charging station on the council-owned car park situated at 66 to 68 The Parade, Ascot Vale. B, endorse the proposed financial and legal arrangements detailed in the confidential attachment. C, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to prepare, negotiate and execute a lease with EV Networks to implement an electric vehicle charging station at 66 to 68 The Parade, Ascot Vale. And D, continue to authorise officers to explore further opportunities for electric vehicle charging in Moonee Valley, including off Keilor Road, in line with previous resolutions of Council and incorporating new knowledge gained from the implementation of a charging station at 66 to 68 The Parade, Ascot Vale.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks very much, Mayor. This is a really exciting motion, and I know it's one of these small steps in a really large task and large problem, but it's a really important small step because it's proposing our first ever electric vehicle charging station on council-owned land, and it has taken us from last April to now for officers to do the appropriate negotiations and to work with the arena partner, the companies, I guess, that were successful in the arena grants, and to put together a proposal that works for the partner, that works for council, and that is in a location that is going to provide the necessary infrastructure and logistics for this to work for residents. Obviously, it's just one site, and I wish it were. I wish it was dozens of sites, and I'm really excited about what we might learn from this one site, the data that we might be able to get in terms of its usage, and any troubleshooting, any improvements that we need to make so that we can have more sites in the future at a whole range of different locations in Moonee Valley. This came about because last April, Council did vote unanimously to ask officers to look into opportunities for us to do this. And so the point D of the motion is just making explicit that we're hoping officers continue to further those opportunities, which I'm sure they will, and look at some of the other sites that I know councillors might be really keen to see across was it the same? Yes. Might be really keen to see across the municipality. Sorry, in answer to a question just asked by the Mayor, yes, it was. For those of people who haven't yet, I guess, ventured into the world of electric vehicles, there's an opportunity to do so coming up in April that's being run by local community members, and I know Council's helping out with that, and I think it is the 27th of April, but I might have that date incorrect. I might have to update that, but it's an opportunity to see different electric vehicles and to talk to owners about how they work, or how the public charging might work as well. It is going to be at charge. It's not a free of charge public charger, but it is going to be accessible for a wide range of vehicles, and it is going to be a fast charger, a DC fast charger, so it will take possibly more time than your petrol pump, but not as long as it takes to charge a car at home. Obviously, petrol's gone rocketing skywards this week. I unfortunately have a petrol vehicle, and I filled my petrol vehicle for the most I've ever paid for a tank the other day. It would cost about, on average, $20 to $30, maybe $40 to charge, and $40 would be a large vehicle, to charge an electric vehicle at a charging station like this. So it's about half the cost of petrol, and the commitment from EV is that it is 100% renewable power as well. So that's a bonus. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
I think Councillor Isa's covered all of the key points. I did want to note that there was a risk noted in the report about there being concern about loss of car parking because of an initiative like this, and I just wanted to make the point to those who might have that concern that this is not the loss of car parking, it's the creation of a new type of car park, and hopefully it will be able to encourage the uptake of electric vehicles throughout our city, and I do look forward to seeing more of these types of leases negotiated in future.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and I probably need to just be somewhat cautious of what I say, knowing that this particular report does have a confidential attachment, so I may need to make some vaguer statements than I normally would. Look, after we've been briefed on this particular report, my desire with it was to look at ways of encouraging new people to use EVs, and ways of actually taking the community members on a ride. Now, obviously for EV networks, they want to put the charging station in the suburb with the most EV users. That's a business decision. They're here to make money. They're not, they're not an NGO. They're here to make money. So their probably main motivation, just speculating here, would be, where would you put a charging station when you need to make some return because it's going to cost a substantial amount of money to install it, and people will pay, as Councillor Isa said, $14 per charge. Where are you going to put it? Let's put it where there's the most electric vehicles. And 3032, according to the latest figures, 2020, had the highest number of EV ownership based on Vic Roads registrations. So obviously there was a motive for them to put it there. I would have liked to see us putting it somewhere where there isn't great EV ownership, because then that gives you a chance to maybe encourage, or people who don't have EVs can see, oh, well, all right, this particular car park, whichever it will be, I'm not saying specific sites because I don't want to breach confidentiality, but this specific site's got an EV charger, let's look at this. I also thought there could be merit in, rather than just having it tucked out the back of Ascot Vale on the parade, you look at what some of the other councils have done. Yarra's at the library, Oak Park, it's at the leisure centre, and then how could EV sites tie in with the elements of MV 2040 rather than just being in a shopping precinct, because you could have it down by the river and that ties into our green narrative, or at your leisure centres, or at your the library car parks like Yarra do. So I guess for me, my thoughts were more, where's it going to be best for us as a council to encourage people to use, but also to tie in with the themes of MV 2040, and not just where's the best spot for EV networks to get better bang for their buck and hopefully make their money back. I think we do have a way to go with EV ownership, because obviously the figures that came out, the latest 2020 Vic Roads registrations, 3042, for example, has three EV vehicles. Obviously, there's a cost prohibition as well. Electric vehicles, 25,000 more than your standard petrol, and that's probably the biggest restriction to ownership, and why most of us, or all of us around here, don't necessarily drive them. That's my time. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor, and I just wanted to thank the officers for the work that they've done to date on this. Obviously, this is going to be the inevitable. As we combat climate change, we're going to have to increase the uptake and the usability of electric cars. But I think this is another perfect example where council's picking up the slack from the state and federal governments, because it's strange that at this point we still don't have any legislation or any guiding strategic vision around how we're going to roll out or replace petrol stations with chargers. I mean, it also doesn't help that the state government's also currently charging or penalising electric car users with the new road user charge. But irrespective, it's going to be interesting to see how the change rolls out, whereas we've generally had nothing to do with petrol stations other than providing planning and land use. So it'll be interesting to see whether local government has a bit more of an active role to play. But yeah, no, I really appreciate the officers putting the time into this, and something that's really important and we'll have to keep working on.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa, would you like to close?
Mayor, if I may, I'll just respond to a couple of really important points that Councillor Nation raised, and I think it's a fair comment around that desire to build infrastructure to encourage more people to take up electric vehicles. I think that's a really fair point. I guess one of the balances with electric vehicle charge and public charges is that at the moment, though, people who own electric vehicles are largely those who can charge them at home, because it's not being able to charge them at home that is one of the barriers. So at the moment, about 80% of charging of electric vehicles is at home. So it's people who are in apartments or who are in without off-street parking, who there are some more barriers for charging, who perhaps haven't taken up the electric vehicle. And so the public charges are really a provision for people who might not have access at home. And so often it's the high density areas where there might be more apartments or homes where there are not off-street parking, where there's actually more need for the public charges. So I do take your point, and as I said earlier, I hope that in a few months or years or whatever, we're rolling out charges. They're at petrol stations, as Councillor Bettio said, or they're really accessible. But at the moment, I guess it's just put a few in and see how we go and see what data helps inform our placement in the future. But that possibly helps to explain some of the potential reasoning, behind some of that thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.4 on the agenda is Sherborne Street, Essendon statutory process outcome for the reinstatement of partial road closure to remove entry from Buckley Street. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with a couple of additional points, which I'll read out. Additional point F, complete a review of the changes above 6 months after implementation, changes above 6 months after implementation to determine any changed traffic movements / new behaviours of drivers. And point G, incorporate the results of the post-implementation review into the findings of Notice of Motion number 2021/09, improving travel and traffic safety for schools in Moonee Valley, to help determine if a broader Essendon/Moonee Ponds school precinct traffic management plan is required to assist with safer and more efficient traffic flow in the precinct.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Given my reading comprehension skills there, let's hope I get through this. This recommendation, as the title suggests, is the closure of a statutory process to reinstate a partial closure of Sherborne Street to exit only at Buckley Street, with the main intention to improve road safety and optimise traffic movements around the Essendon School precinct. It's also a decision to not progress the change of Sherborne Street to one way at any point. That was another question that we asked the community at the time. So the return of this treatment to the northern end of Sherborne Street by closing it to southbound traffic from Rose and Buckley Street aims to address a number of issues that have emerged since the two-way opening after the level crossing removal. Following the opening of Sherborne Street to two-way traffic, both Sherborne Street and Stanley Street, a similarly narrow local road, experienced significant traffic flow increases, more than double the traffic at peak times in the case of Stanley Street and a 70% increase in traffic through Sherborne Street. The ultimate goal here is to improve traffic movement and pedestrian safety, and this change in the treatment of the Buckley Street exit is an important step in that. It will improve pedestrian safety by increasing the amount of time pedestrians can cross at Sherborne Street and access the Essendon train station. We know that at school leaving time there's a lot of congestion with students trying to get across the road and a lot of queuing of pedestrians along the very narrow footpath that is the Sherborne Street between Buckley and Stanley. So through that we also hope to meet the objective of encouraging active and public transport. We also think that will complement the other treatments that are planned, such as a raised zebra crossing proposed for Stanley Street to improve the safety of the students that are moving around the schools. It's expected to assist with traffic congestion in Sherborne Street by also encouraging the counterclockwise movement of cars around the loop at school pick-up and drop-off time. So that's coming from cars coming down Leslie Road, up Inglebray Court and left into Sherborne Street. Through encouraging that loop, we hope that the congestion that's caused by the two-way traffic at the back of Lowther Hall there will improve. Of course, this won't be a panacea for the issues that the precinct face. We know that there's a lot of schools in the precinct, and I think that the additional points, F and G there, we'll see what additional things we might look at and improvements in the area to, continue along this journey of improving the problems that we see at the peak times of school pick-up and drop-off. And I thank Councillor Nation for his suggestions of those additions. The partial closure does address another issue that is something that Sherborne Street residents have experienced, which is an ongoing issue, not just at school pick-up and drop-off time, but an increase in traffic through the street at all times of the day. It considers the suitability of Sherborne Street as a very narrow local road as the preferred thoroughfare for the traffic that heads south from Rose Street and the Buckley Street service road through heading south into Moonee Ponds. The closure will encourage drivers to take preferably Mount Alexander Road via Shamrock Street, but alternatively Leslie Road, which is a much wider street, able to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic without using parking lanes for passing. As the report indicates, the Council's traffic report don't suggest that this will mean a return to the pre-level crossing removal traffic levels for Leslie Street, as a number of the cars that used to use Leslie Road were those that were turning right from Buckley Street to try and avoid the boom gates being down at the level crossing. So we do expect that while there will be an increase in the levels that we currently have, they're not expected to return to the pre-level crossing removal points. The reinstatement of the exit-only traffic treatment for Sherborne Street is recommended on the basis of detailed traffic studies and analysis, and it's designed to improve outcomes for traffic flow and pedestrian safety, ultimately supporting our aims of encouraging active and sustainable transport options.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Arza.
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor Hodgson's covered the substance. I just wanted to thank all of the submitters for their responses and also the officers who've been working on this for quite some time. It was quite difficult last year to get the timing right for the traffic counts with all of the lockdowns, and there had to be a number of attempts to try to make sure that all of the traffic data was collected accurately. So I thank officers for their persistence in that regard. Obviously, this is quite a complex issue, the traffic, and I do thank Councillor Nation for the additional points, which I think are really wise in terms of taking stock of seeing what these changes can, what new behaviours there are, and then considering what other improvements might be possible to, as Councillor Hodgson said, the primary goal of all of this is to maintain safety for school children. A very large number of school children crossing both from the train line area across to to 3 different schools, and that's at the heart of this proposal. So again, I thank the residents for their patience. This has taken some time to get to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. And I do recall a time very early in my tenure on council when we did a traffic management plan for this precinct, and it was an extremely challenging process. And I think the consultation on the partial closure at Buckley Street here is a very representative of what that consultation and traffic management study was like, because depending on what street you lived on, you had very strong views about the way traffic should flow, and entry and exit points. And looking at the feedback here for the partial closure at Buckley Street, 31 written submissions, 13 in favour, 17 against, but the 13 predominantly live in a street, and everyone else lives in anywhere but that street. And that's often the challenges you get with consultation is that everyone will have a view depending on how it impacts them, and then you need to come to some sort of resolution that you think is going to be the best outcome. So for this particular closure, or this particular reinstatement of the closure, I'm happy to support this, but I do thank Councillor Hodgson for including that point F, and thank officers for that suggestion, as we do want to see what this closure does to traffic flows and how it impacts the broader area. And then that point G, also thank Councillor Hodgson for adding that in, because I think it was Councillor Adams that had a notice of motion towards the March last year, 2021/09, in regards to travel and traffic safety around schools. I think, Councillor Adams, you asked for a report to come back by August 2021. I don't think it has yet, but hopefully we can incorporate some of this in that notice of motion request, because it is an area that's extremely impacted in school times. The changes with Buckley Street on both sides of the road, not having the traffic flowing through from McPhail and Violet and Flower, but also Lorraine and even Cliff Street have changed access due to median strips and the tunnel coming up. So an precinct-wide traffic management plan and study, as challenging as it may be, and as much as I just spoke earlier about the challenges when we first did it, I think it's needed, because ultimately we want safe and efficient traffic flows through the area. We want safe and efficient pedestrian and cyclist flows through the area, and we need to take a holistic look at that entire area. And I think now's the time that we've reinstated this closure, and that the tunnel is completed. So I'll leave that with the CEO to bring that back to council. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No? Councillor Hodgson, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to note, for those who were interested, and Councillor Nation raised that there were a number of residents, mainly not in Sherborne Street, who didn't support the reinstatement, that the officers have done some work in attachment 7 of the agenda, which you'll be able to find online, around responding to some of the key concerns that were raised in terms of not reinstating. And I do think that on balance what we have is a recommendation that will achieve those objectives of trying to improve safety for pedestrians, improve traffic flow through the area, and try and achieve our objective of encouraging active and sustainable transport. A lot of the problems that we see in the area would be solved if we took a few cars off the road, but that's a larger piece of work around behaviour change that council's committed to do. So for now, I hope that councillors will support this recommendation to reinstate the partial closure.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isaac, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Sypek. That motion is carried. Item 10.5 on the agenda is response to joint letter, temporary road closure of Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move an alternative.
Thanks, Councillor Bedio.
That Council resolves that A, due to the unavailability of funding previously thought to be applicable, Council will not pursue at this time the proposed temporary full road closure of Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds between Pratt Street and Shooter Street as the preferred major initiative under Council's Enhancing Outdoor Trading Program, as endorsed at the Council meeting held on 16th November 2021. B, engagement will be undertaken with traders and other stakeholders to investigate other opportunities and initiatives to enhance local business economic development in Moonee Ponds and across the municipality in the aftermath of the COVID-19 restrictions. C, the joint letter organiser will be advised of unavailability of the anticipated funding and subsequent outcome on this matter and invited to engage in discussions about future proposals to enhance street activation in Puckle Street.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mayor. Obviously, I can't say I'm necessarily pleased to be moving this motion. This activation was something that I put a lot of effort behind alongside other councillors. It was something I was really excited for. But unfortunately, due to the conditions around the funding from the Departments of Jobs and Precincts, unfortunately, it's not something that we can afford under our current budget. We, Moonee councillors, have been working very closely with the Moonee Ponds Traders Association, and there is appetite in the Traders Association for activations. There's appetite for also opening up or creating more open space. So I'm hopeful that officers will continue to work with the relevant stakeholders. I'll certainly be pushing for us to be having some form of activations down in MPAC, as I'm sure my colleagues will be. It's just unfortunately at this point we don't have enough money to make it happen. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I share Councillor Bedio's disappointment that this is where we've landed with this idea, and the original decision that we made back in November was one to take a step towards achieving our vision for Moonee Ponds Activity Centre Precinct. The concept was to create more space for visitors on foot to stop and linger and spend time in the street. When you're trying to create space, obviously that space comes from somewhere, and there was concern from the traders about the pathway we'd chosen. But generally speaking, you know, we know that people who stay longer in an area will spend more, and this was an attempt to support one of our major business precincts. Since that decision in November, where we needed to make a really fast and bold decision about how to allocate that grant funding that came in, there were a few things that happened. We had the Omicron variant hit, which meant that we didn't have the relatively COVID-free summer that we were expecting. And we also received advice that the temporary closure wasn't suitable for the grant funding that we had thought was available. The first factor is, I think, a major reason why we had the pushback from traders that we had. And I acknowledge that, you know, the concern that came from traders about this being bad timing and not something they wanted to see in Puckle Street was about them, you know, being in a very vulnerable position at the time. Sorry. Is everything all right?
Sorry, we just had Councillor Adams turn off the screen for a while, but sorry.
Okay, I thought I'd said something wrong.
No, definitely not.
So through that, I think what we've learned is that we need to work really closely with our traders and make sure that the next opportunity that comes up and the next idea that we want to take forward and run with really meets them in the middle with their understanding of what risks they don't want to see to their business, understand their fears, and work with them on solutions about how we will achieve our vision in the future. We've had some really great conversations already about the types of activations that we might see, and we're really committed to, over the next year and in the longer term, continue those conversations so that we're in a position to move really quickly if future opportunities like the one we saw last year arise again. Whether that's through our budget or future grant streams, I think we're really committed still to seeing Puckle Street come to life.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson, and apologies about that. We just had a minor technical glitch with Councillor Adams' screen, but I believe that she didn't even know about it. It was just people working frantically behind the scenes to make sure we had her back. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Just quickly, because my colleagues have covered most points, when the decision was made on 16th of November to try something a bit different in Puckle Street, I received a lot of communication from residents who were really excited about the proposal and were really looking forward to it. I got queries while away over summer. I got queries from people wondering why it wasn't happening, wondering when it was to take place. And I know there's considerable disappointment in the community who live, particularly those who live in the apartment buildings in Puckle Street or who live around the area, that this exciting proposal didn't eventuate. We know that there was obviously some mixed response from traders, but I think I think I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I was really keen to work with traders to try to work out what might work, what sort of exciting activations might we be able to make work that I guess met all needs and pleased all parties, like we've been able to do in Pinoak, where it's not perfect, but everyone's enjoyed what we've put there, and we're learning from some of the from the experience. So I was really, really disappointed that this hasn't happened, and so I share disappointment of community members. But I know that there are, as Councillor Bettio said, there are stakeholders, traders, community members who want us to try some things in Puckle Street, and I know that as Moonee ward councillors, we're all really keen to work together with all stakeholders to create open space and street activation opportunities and events in Puckle Street. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Bettio, would you like to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.6 on the agenda is the response to parking-related joint letter and petition. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council resolves to A, note the responses to the petition and joint letter, items 7.1 and 7.2, tabled at the Council meeting dated 27 Jan 2022. B, note the temporary installation of parklets and similar activations in Strathmore form part of Council's enhancing outdoor trading program to improve local businesses and economic activity. C, collaborate and engage with local traders and users of the Strathmore shopping precinct regarding alternative initiatives to enhance economic development, parking management and traffic flow in the surrounding area, including, open brackets, including a review of the 2P parking restrictions precinct-wide to see if a more diverse mix of parking controls may alleviate some of the identified parking issues. D, maintain the current traffic management and enforcement practices for major events held at the Melbourne Showgrounds and Flemington Racecourse. E, capture parking occupancy data in the events area for different sized events to determine the appropriate threshold for defining a major event and to report this back to Council through the Municipal Parking Strategy Review. F, advise the lead petitioner and joint letter organiser of the outcome of investigations as outlined in this report. And G, include information about the operation of the enforcement practices for major events at the Flemington Racecourse and Melbourne Showgrounds in the next Valley View, or an alternative form of written communication to all affected households as appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Isa. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. And we might speak to this in two parts because it is a response to a petition that was received in Buckley Ward and a joint letter received in Moonee Ward. So I might speak to the petition, and a petition was tabled in regards to the wording was improving parking opportunities in the Strathmore shopping precinct. Now, it was kick-started by some complaints about our parklet activations. There's 2 or 3 up in the Strathmore precinct, but the actual petition came to us just in the form of improving parking in the Strathmore area. So this is a fairly straightforward. The officers have looked at the petition, and this is bringing it back to council and responding appropriately. What I have done with point C, and hopefully it isn't controversial, is just putting in a further action so we can actually have a look at addressing some more concerns of the petitioners. So one of the strange things about the parking up in Strathmore Village is that it is predominantly 2P. So all down Napier Street, Lloyd Street, it's pretty much all 2P, even the council-owned at-grade car park that runs off Lloyd Street. We would know from our other shopping precincts that to generate turnover of traffic and therefore increase parking opportunities as per the petition is to include a diverse mix of parking controls. So there are some 1 or 2 15p bays up at Strathmore Village, but the majority are just all 2p. So potentially we can have a look at those parking controls, 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the actual traders around, because obviously if you're popping into the small supermarket, or maybe you're popping into the deli, even doing a broader shop, maybe 1p is suitable. There are some medical clinics up there, maybe the 2p is suitable. So I think that might be a suitable action, just to review them and have a look, maybe do a parking study to see what we can do to help with the issues. We know that the parklets can be somewhat controversial, again, depending on if it helps or hinders your business. I would like to think that they primarily help our businesses, because even if you've got a parklet almost right out in front of your shop, and if the parklet is servicing a food and drink beverage and not your retail outlet, you also then do have everyone who's sitting in the parklet as stationary eyes, having a look into your shop and potentially getting to know your shop. So I do think they have benefit. I understand that taking away any parking can be frustrating, but from what I've experienced, the parklets, particularly in Buckley Ward, have been a fantastic success, and particularly for areas like Napier Street, I'm talking about the Essendon end of Napier Street, and the Strathmore end of Napier Street. They've brought a different vibe and dynamic to that area, particularly after 5 o'clock, which is really exciting. The second D, E, F and G, I'll let the seconder, Councillor Isa from Moonee Ward, speak to those items. And again, thank the petitioner for going to the effort of getting those signatures, and hopefully this will go some way to addressing the issues that they have cited. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Isa.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nation, for moving the motion. Appreciate the addition of the point G with respect to the Flemington Racecourse and Melbourne Showgrounds events. I was hoping, in fact, Councillor Nation, that you might speak somewhat to the history of the events area, because it certainly is a history that, it was probably an issue. It was probably an issue when in my previous term in 2007 and the like, but it obviously has taken some twists and turns over the past 10 years, and to the point where I think what has happened and why we were contacted via a joint letter is that somehow there seems to be a breakdown in communication with residents about how that enforcement works and what events are covered by those enforcement permits. Hence the point G, to really reiterate and communicate that with residents, whether it's perhaps for new residents who've moved in the last few years and are not sure when those signs and when the enforcement is applicable. I also thank officers for noting that they are going to, in point E there, they are going to take note of how it is working and checking the parking occupancy data to see if through the Municipal Parking Strategy Review there might be need to reconsider any of the thresholds or any of the way that the signs operate. Residents who live around the Melbourne Showgrounds and Flemington Racecourse sort of have the best and worst of experiences. They have had access to the racecourse over the lockdown, which has been really lovely, access to the show when that's been able to take place, and to events there, but it does come at some amenity inconvenience at times, and the permits are a way of recognising that. So hopefully there can be some clarity around how that operates, communication to residents, and we can perhaps take note of any anomalies in the data and review that as appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? No. Councillor Nation, would you like to close? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 10.7 on the agenda is response to notice of motion 2020/25 toilets in Woodlands Park and 2020/27 public toilets in public open spaces. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Sharp. And a seconder? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, obviously toilets aren't the most glamorous thing to talk about, but obviously they are a vital part of our infrastructure in providing services to our community. Back in December 2020, we spoke about them twice that night with two different notices of motions, one from myself about Woodlands Park and one from yourself, Madam Mayor, regarding a wider look at providing toilets throughout the municipality through our public open spaces. I think it's a really great idea to be able to forward think about how we are going to fix up some of the outdated toilets that we have within the different wards. So the public toilet plan, I think, will be certainly welcome. So I thank the CEO and officers for their work already done, and obviously to be done on that. And with the onset of COVID, obviously we've all realised how much our parks and gardens are valued by our community, and toilets are a part of that. If we want our residents to be able to enjoy their time at our parks, particularly our bigger parks and places like that, there needs to be appropriate services and able for them to use. I remember that, like Woodlands Park, the reason I brought up the notice of motion was because the queues were absolutely miles long on some nights. Some of those warmer nights when everyone was still in lockdown, everyone just flocked to the park. So the more toilets we can fix will be a good thing. So certainly welcome this report, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to second and support this motion. And as Councillor Sharp mentioned, toilets aren't overly glamorous, but we do all need them. And we also need to look at where the existing toilets are located within our city, which are end of life, which exist but aren't necessarily known to the public, which is another big thing, because there are toilets that are attached onto the back of current pavilions, Aberfeldy Athletics Track, for example, that people don't necessarily know exist. And also to look at opportunities to install toilets, be it Woodlands Park, Queen's Park's obviously getting done, I believe, Green Spine, and this one picks up the Canning Street as well. I think one of the things that the public and potentially those watching or listening don't necessarily realise is the actual cost of installing a single cubicle automated toilet. It's $300,000 outlined in the financial implications page, part of the report on page 47. So it's not as simple as just putting toilets everywhere they're needed. There obviously needs to be a budget request, even a refurbishment's about $50,000 to $70,000, and then ongoing maintenance costs. So these are things that will obviously get picked up in a public toilet plan, and also looking at how we transition our open spaces from COVID times to post-COVID times, and having a look at the demand and use, because there'll be some areas that were extremely busy when people were locked down, but now one existing toilet will suffice, but there'll be other areas that obviously get that ongoing use. So look, I think it's something that we need to do. Thank you obviously Councillor Sharp and Councillor Byrne for bringing the notice of motions and getting the ball rolling, I was going to say I look forward to using new toilets, but I look forward to seeing where we need to place these toilets in the future, and then hopefully we get support within our budget discussions in the future to be able to actually install them. I think I better leave it there.
Please do. Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor, and a lot of potty talk around council over the last year and a bit. I think it is really important to look at the Avondale option identified in the report. It is a really comprehensive opportunities report as well. I definitely thank the staff member that we hired to do the work, although it would have been interesting work surveying members of the community patronage of our toilets. I think as well what's interesting, I know Councillor Nation touched on it, but the sheer cost of an automated toilet versus just a refurbishment and non-automation, I think is really interesting. I'd probably be keen to look at the latter as well, although I do really enjoy the soundtracks to the automated toilets around Melbourne. I think the song is "What Is Love, Sweet Love." If anyone's been around Melbourne, to the automated toilet, so I'd be keen to hear that as well.
Things we talk about at council. Thanks for that insight, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Bedio.
We've probably talked enough about this motion, but I just want to, reiterate that, I've spoken to quite a lot of my constituents who, throughout COVID have utilised their open space a lot more than they would have in the past. And I can say that there is a significant demand for additional public toilets in Queen's Park. And I have no doubt that will be uncovered in the public toilet plan. So encourage anyone, if you're after a riveting read, to get onto the agenda and have a look at the report from officers.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Isa.
Sorry not to be as amusing as Councillor Tyson, but I actually wanted to just add quite a serious point, which is that we have had a number of requests from residents to make more accessible the public or the toilets that we're building in pavilions. So some of the newer designs have toilets that open onto the outside, but they're not open to the public, with in the same sort of timed manner, or the way that some of the public toilets in the discussion paper have been set out. So in this plan, if we can make better use of our our pavilions to provide public toilets and public amenities for people using parks, for people using bike paths, particularly along. We've got the Ormond Pavilion's got a toilet that is not always accessible, and then the new build down at Flemington Hub, there's going to be a toilet, but I'm not sure how accessible that will be for park users. So the more that we can make use of the facilities that we're building, I hope that this plan can help us to achieve that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No. Councillor Sharp, would you like to close? Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 11 on the agenda is notices of motion, and item 11.1, I call on Councillor Sharp to present your notice of motion entitled Notice of Motion number 2022-05, Heritage Significance of Properties on Mount Alexander Road, Essendon.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, take notice that at the meeting of Council, it is my intention to move the Council resolves to request the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report to Council by June 2022 regarding the potential heritage significance of 1097, 1099, 1101, 1103 and 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, including reference to any previous heritage studies completed on these properties and the process by which a new heritage study may be commenced.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. You will have noticed I changed the numbers slightly because I did have them incorrect on my notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor Adams and Councillor Nation, for pointing that out. That was just a miscounting on my behalf. But I won't say too much about this at this time. Suffice to say that this group of 5 properties in Mount Alexander Road are part of Essendon North, the village shops there. And if you have a look at the buildings, they're built over 100 years ago. A couple of them have dates at the top, and there's actually a couple of really old houses attached to them at the back. You can see particular roof lines and chimneys popping out from behind the facades. And from what I can understand, we've never actually looked at these properties in any of our gap studies going back over the years. So I would just like to determine, to confirm if or if not any heritage studies have been completed, and if not, how a heritage study may be commenced at this time. So it's purely investigation at the moment. Obviously, these buildings are very important to the fabric of Essendon and the fabric of the entire shops in that strip, and just looking forward to some more information. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to support Councillor Sharp. Obviously, this is just kick-starting a study to see if there is any heritage value to the properties. This is not unique. We obviously had one a house further up in the village that I think Councillor Gauci-Marici requested a heritage review on, and we've had a house in Richardson Street where a ex-Prime Minister used to grow up. So this is not unique. Sometimes our heritage studies and heritage gap studies don't necessarily identify properties that then councillors can request reviews of. Look forward to hearing back to see if there is any value to these properties and any controls that are recommended to be placed on them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Isa?
I was wondering if I could just ask a question, just a point of clarification. I don't know if it's going to be able to be answered because it's a notice of motion, so I'm not sure. But I was just wondering whether it's possible that this could come back as part of the Stage 2 Heritage Gap, the report on the Stage 2 Heritage Gap 2020 that's currently underway, to save officers doing a separate report for this. Is it possible that it could be brought back in a report on that?
I would say, Councillor Isa, that's not in the notice of motion, but I would say that as per the previous toilet motion, if the officers incorporate things, they will choose to incorporate it potentially.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I guess we do have the Stage 2 2020 Heritage Gap underway. It was commenced, I think it was the 25th of August 2020. So it may be that when we receive a report back on that, it may or may not be appropriate for some comments to be incorporated around these properties to save us, to save officers doing a separate report, presenting a separate report for us. I guess I'm just increasingly conscious of the additional work that we tend to create through the chamber for officers. I guess too, I'd want to be sure that, and I guess I'm picking up on what Councillor Nation was referring to just now in terms of the property at Glass Street. I was fairly disappointed, and I know other people were even more so, quite devastated, when after all the work that was done to try to put in place interim heritage protection for the Glass Street property, and all of the effort that was put into the citations and putting together something that was of substance and defensible, and the officers brought us a recommendation to put in place that interim heritage, it was not actually then supported by council. So I guess I'd like to think that if we are asking council officers to do all of this work about some new properties, that there is some genuine intention to then follow any advice around that, I would hope.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to confirm, this notice of motion is seeking to find out more information, so I certainly don't expect it to be a War and Peace novel. It's basically asking about any previous heritage studies and the process by which a new heritage study may be commenced. If we're serious about looking after our heritage and protecting our heritage, and items such as these are flagged, then I think we need to take it seriously and garner all the information we can get, and that's what I've asked for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 11.2, I now call on Councillor Tyson to present his notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2022/06, Review of Secondary College Zones for Avondale Heights.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a lengthy one. So I move that Council resolves to A, note the 2019 Council resolution requesting the Victorian Minister for Education and the Member for Niddrie 2, review the secondary college zones covering Avondale Heights. 2, that the Department of Education review requirements that Avondale Heights residents must travel through multiple suburbs and cross the Maribyrnong River to attend Braybrook or Sunshine College. And 3, provide a formal response to Council indicating when and how changing school zones can occur. B, note the attached response in 2019, which stated the Department would monitor the area and conduct an annual review. C, note the change.org petition addressed to the Department of Education and Minister for Education, which has 1,054 signatures, titled Change the School Zones for Avondale Heights, Victoria. D, continue to advocate for this issue, which directly affects families and young people in our municipality. E, instruct the Mayor to write to the Member for Niddrie and Minister for Education requesting 1, the results of the annual review, and that 2, the Department of Education engages with the Avondale Heights residents to address the impact on students and families currently required to travel through multiple suburbs to attend their zoned school. And F, requests the Victorian Government to change the designated neighbourhood school school zone for residents in Avondale Heights by removing Braybrook College and Sunshine College from 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, look, that was a really straightforward and I think laid out explanation of the issue. It's something that I know you've been contacted about over the years. I have as well in a previous role, and I'm sure Councillor Sypek has too. It really just makes sense for the school zones to be changed. It's on the other side of the river. It is difficult to access for people, for families living in Avondale Heights. As well, I mean, it just adds to the traffic going through Maribyrnong, going through Canning Street, all through the area, when I think it absolutely makes sense for the zones to change. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 12 on the agenda is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business tonight? No. We are now on to confidential reports. The next item of business is confidential reports, and there is one confidential report listed this evening. Councillors, is there a motion that Council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant of Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss the following planning matter? Item 13.1, Sports Pavilion Planning. Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Nation. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. So this is where we say goodnight to those watching the meeting via the live stream. Thank you for your interest in tonight's meeting, and we'll see you again next time. And if you are looking for something to do on the weekend, please check out our Summer in the Valley. We still have 2 more events to go, one at Woodlands Park and one at the Centreway. And then of course we are finishing off at Queen's Park as well. So 3 more to go. Like to see you there. Bye.